it's great to be able to come back and say, you know, these stuff that's part of your life, and everyone recognizes one of these things up on the wall. That came and started from an industrial designer.
This episode is about finding your path in design and helping the next generation find theirs. Joining me today is Greg Darby. Greg, welcome. Who are you and what do you do?
Oh, well, hello, Max. How are you doing? Great to connect. So my name's Greg Darby. I'm the chair and an associate professor here at the College for Creative Studies of the Product Design or Industrial Design program, and a newly program called Robotics and Human Centered Design. So,
Wow. Okay. That I didn't know about. We were classmates at CCS, obviously. And while we've stayed in touch, we really haven't had a chance to sit down in a few years. So,
mhm.
conversation like this is really exciting.
Well,
Uh,
thanks for having me. I appreciate it. You've got a lot of great guests and great podcasts. So, I feel honored to be a part of it.
oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, you're helping us wind down the season a bit with kind of bookending two CCS alums and friends of mine from uh, back in the day. So you found yourself leading the program that we started our journey in. What has that experience been like?
Um, it's always a moving target. And, anything in design is always a moving target. There's so many different variables that happen. And I like it. I love it because it's design.
Yeah.
I people always ask me like what I do, and I'd like to say I'm a designer, but they're like, oh, well, you're in education, so you're a teacher. And I said, well, I'm just a designer. I design designers. So it's the whole
Right.
process of the curriculum and the content, and my students are the products on a shelf to get hired and get jobs. So what skill sets do we want to give them?
That's great. That's great. It's a way to kind of flip how you think about education when you have a design background.
Yes, yes.
So, Greg, we're going to jump into this. Who or what influenced the way you see the world creatively?
Wow. I I really interesting. I think about like even I go all the way back to my dad. He was an engineer. He was an engineer, Ford Motor Company, but he was always someone that like I always thought of him kind of like the MacGyver guy. He could always fix anything. There was nothing like anything that broke. He's like, well, let's take it apart. Let's figure this out. And most of the time he did. So it's like I didn't think of it that much. That was just kind of my upbringing through that. And so I was always taking things apart and trying to put them back together and figuring out like what makes this thing tick and how does it work. But you know, other inspiration too was, just getting into even just getting into design, finding design was something unique for me. But once I was in design, I love looking at lots of different things. I started out when I was in school with you,
Yeah.
I loved looking at architecture because it wasn't what we did, it wasn't what our assignments were, but it was just something completely different that I loved in the forms and connections of how things came together.
Yeah, I think those physical forms in architecture were very much an inspiration to a lot of us. I remember a lot of us pinning up what from periodicals. Everything was cut out, put up, and there was a lot of really cool modern architecture that we would put up as reference for whether it was products or some new form that we were looking at.
Are you trying to date us now in regards to those architects, aren't you?
I think the gray in our beards are dating us, Greg. Uh, was there a moment you realized this could actually be a career after, whether that was while you were in school or before you started school? What gave you the idea that you could have a career as a designer?
Wow, actually, when I graduated from high school, I went to Western Michigan University and started studying engineering.
Okay.
I did a year of engineering, and I just math, numbers, all that technical stuff just didn't jive with me, didn't work with my brain, and I stumbled upon that. Like at the time, Western had a program. They've since turned it off and then turned it back on again, but um, I looked at the program and I go, well, wait a minute, that's the stuff I really enjoy. It was the manufacturing and it was the making of new things and coming up with new ideas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. So, and my story into design is the fact that I remember looking through that catalog and going and like worried about calling up my dad. Right, Dad, I'm just not going to be this engineer. It's just not my thing. And um, the great and the shocking part of it was my dad was just like, "Oh yeah, sure, you can go be a designer. That's great." He goes, "Do you know what I do at work?" And I'm like, "Well, you're an engineer. You work on cars. You do different things. What a high school kid doesn't really care
Sure.
what their dad." you know? Um, and so he goes, "Well, I'm a manufacturing and feasibility engineer." And he goes, "I work with the designers to make sure that their designs are manufacturable and feasible for the new concepts." And I'm like, "Never knew that."
Wow,
So,
that's a really great thing to actually kind of find out and then work into an understanding of, oh, that's kind of the handshake we have with the output of what we do.
mhm, yeah, yes, yeah. So I studied a year at Western, and then I ended up coming to CCS, which I didn't know anything about, even though I lived 45 minutes from it.
Right, right.
Mhm.
Greg, as you became a professional designer, what project taught you the most, even if it didn't succeed?
Um, I think, beyond technical skill sets and like that creative problem solving, I think one of the things that I always felt like I lacked was this confidence to just be able to say, I know I can go in there and do it, and like I can tackle anything. And with those critical skills that you learn as a designer, you can get in there and tackle it. You just got to have that confidence. So that first project was, I remember as an intern, my first internship, I was down in Ignition, which is a consultancy down in just outside of Dallas. And, they brought me in and they said, "Oh, well, you're from Detroit, from CCS, so you must know how to draw cars. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to design and remote control cars." And I went, "Oh, I don't draw cars."
Right. Look,
Um,
no shade at all, but I seem to remember your portfolio having a lot of furniture.
yes. Yeah. But I quickly learned, I just said, I'm just going to jump in there and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, they weren't flashy, transportation sketches, but they were very producty orientated, sketches because it's a remote control car, but
Yeah.
um, I can still remember that day. I remember sitting at my desk going, I am going to have to figure this out. And it always comes back to me because it always seems like every project you get into, you always feel like you oversell it. And then you go, I gotta do it,
Yeah.
and if you just get past that, I'm gonna draw a car.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to draw a whole lot of them.
Right.
Um, you can do it. You can get through there, and that's the great skill of being a designer is the fact that you know how to problem solve, you know what to look for, you know how to get into different scenarios, and just hammer it out. Sometimes it may take you 50 pages of some crappy sketches till you finally get into the groove and you go, yeah, now I get it, So,
I don't remember if it was Clyde Foles or Molyneux that used to say, just you have to draw all the bad stuff out, that you just have to keep drawing. I think you're echoing what, subconsciously what we learned is that all of that stuff, it's in there. It's just we're used to that rhythm of what we've seen or what we've done. And
mhm,
by the time you sketch 100 of the thing you didn't know how to draw, you're there, right?
mhm, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
One of the things you mentioned was challenge in helping people discover design as a career path. Um, why do you think so many students struggle to find design even today with like our access to media.
Mhm. I think that, I mean, number one, design is a very small group. But what's the old 7 degrees of separation to
Right.
be able to know seven, if you know somebody, 7 people away will know that person. I think in the design world, it's like three or four.
Yeah.
So it's a really small world. And typically we're always stuck behind closed doors and left confidential. And so a lot of people that work for companies that develop products, um, they don't really know who the designers are. And they just see, oh, here's a new product and I got to market it, or I got to work on this one little component to make that happen. Um, and especially being in Detroit, we're definitely the motor city. And so we're surrounded by automotive makers. And there are, I mean, the sheer numbers of designers compared to the number of engineers is mind boggling.
Sure.
And so these kids, so when kids come into high school and whatever, I mean, what they're exposed to at home is really what is embedded in their mind and saying, oh, well, if dad did that, it's just, I mean, I did the same thing, right?
Right. Right.
Oh, dad's an engineer. I'm going to go be an engineer. And a lot of that happens. And so we have to find a way to kind of let those kids know that, being creative is takes lots of different, it takes lots of different forms. It just doesn't have to happen in art class.
Right.
If you love to modify your bike or your Xbox and do it everything like, yeah, let's get there. But most kids don't think of that as a career path.
Do you think the profession in general has become easier or harder to explain? I know when we were graduating and even trying to get into school, the term industrial design, everybody thought of, oh, you design factories. And now with product design being co opted by software and things like that, how do you navigate as somebody who is welcoming new students? How do you explain what it is you teach and how that fits with engineering or with art?
Hmm. Um, yeah. One of the things I did here in the department on our floor is like when we bring kids through tours and they get to see the different departments and different where they're at, and every department kind of gives them a little bit of a spiel about what we do and what's happening. But I created this wall called of alumni success products. And so there's pictures of products and, everything from, we've got a student that works for, Kevin Durant, and he's got shoes from Nike. And the Adwala bottle was designed in tandem with one of our alumni. But I mean, there's KitchenAid tools, KitchenAid blenders, and
Right.
Ryobi stuff. And so all of these products are out there and pictures of them on the wall. And it's great to be able to come back and say, these stuff that's part of your life, and everyone recognizes one of these things up on the wall. That came and started from an industrial designer. And so why is it in an art school? Because most people think, oh, you're an engineer.
Right.
You engineer this stuff. And I said, well, as an industrial designer, I say we do three things. We make things meaningful, beautiful, and functional. And in that order, so it has to be meaningful. We've got too much stuff in our world. We need better, more meaningful stuff that solves for our problems. And I mean, design in general is about solving for a problem. Um, but it's got to be beautiful. Um, we're we're human beings and we're emotional beings, and we're attracted to things that have an emotional connection to us. And that's where the art comes in. Every product that comes out should be even if it's a remote control or a new water bottle, should be like a piece of sculpture. Think of it
Right.
like a Modin or a Rodin sculpture. You want to walk around it and see it and pick it up and look underneath it. Um, and so that is the art. You're leading people's eye to telling a story, and where do I go and how do I learn this and what's going on. And you're using all those artistic skill sets of composition and patterns and repetition and form and shadow and light to do all that, to tell that story. But then it has to be functional. That's the difference between art and design, is the fact that, what we do has to be made and manufactured. So you've got constrictions and restraints to make that happen. So,
Yeah, that's always been a challenge for, that idea of, well, if you're just doing concepts, isn't it just art? And it's the ultimate output may end up being the art, but it has to think about, oh, this is still needs to be able to be made in our world. Otherwise you push into, designers can transition between art and design, but their output are two very different requirements, really.
yeah, yeah. You can draw anything, doesn't necessarily mean you can make it.
Right.
But there's a concept designers out there that just, we've got a whole program called concept design where they're designing futuristic, crazy stuff for movies and mock-ups and prototypes to get put into commercials and all this stuff. And like, it's a one-off thing. It's
Sure.
it's 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 a piece of art at that
Yeah.
point in time. So,
You had mentioned the robotics as we were coming into this, and one of the things that I think a lot of people see industrial design as a generalist education, and a lot of students kind of increasingly want specialization and kind of more of a career outcome. Is that what pushed this specialty into robotics?
I mean, you can see culturally where we're going with
Right.
AI and, the robots coming into, all different areas of our lives. But I think it does come into, you know, our program is about the industrial design program and product design program is about making very good generalist industrial designers. You can take those skill sets, that mindset, that problem solving, that, the critical thinking process and apply it to anything. But what's happening in the trend of higher education is, number one, it's expensive,
Yeah.
and people are looking for that return on the investment. And I completely agree. I don't think anybody in education goes, oh, this is worth the, extra house you're going to need to
Right.
buy. And so people are looking for that direct. I know if I go into robotics or if I go into transportation or I go into UX UI, I know I can physically look up those numbers and see what those job numbers are, what those salaries can be, and where I'm going to be going. So they understand that return on the investment. Where if you look up industrial design generalists, that information isn't there.
Right.
Um, so that's kind of what led us into the robotics and human-centered design program, was because, there's a huge group of people here, kids here in the first robotics program, that Michigan is one of the largest densities of the first robotics program, which is strange. I learned that over the past year or two in building the program, but um, they all go into engineering.
And yeah, of
So,
course. Of course. Greg, what do you think students need most today that might be different from when we were in school?
um, yeah, I
Or
mean,
should I phrase it maybe what do students worry about that we didn't have to worry about?
well, I mean, you can talk about AI if you want to go down that road.
That's up to you. I'm just more in general, I think the advancement of all sorts of technology, we were still like heavy into markers back when
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
So,
hmm and it is. I mean, there's tons of different tools out there, and so it's, do I need to know all these tools? Do I have to know everything? And the answer is no. If again, if I say, if you know to learn, like we teach Rhino as in the second semester freshman year. If you know Rhino, you understand NURBS, you understand where points in space, connected with lines, create surfaces. You know the theory of it. You can go pick up Alias and you can go pick up lots of other pieces of software. So we're not training you to be, for a trade. It's a general education that you can apply to lots of different areas.
Right.
And I think that makes us designers, number one, valuable. But I think what are kids worried about is, yeah, are there jobs out there? What tools do I need to know? Is AI going to be replacing us and everything else? So there's a lot out there.
Right. I think we were probably more worried about, um, overseas designers and, like, as we were coming out, there were a lot of schools coming up overseas, particularly, like, a few years after we got out of school, a lot of the Chinese schools started really graduating a lot of students, and there was a lot of potential for competition in that way, and now on top of that, there's AI. So,
Oh yeah. I mean,
yeah.
China and India and AI are
Yeah.
really, really kicking out a lot of designers and good designers. Um, I just think, everything's very cultural. Um,
Right.
and, I just took 36 students to Japan for 10 days just a couple of weeks ago. We got back, and just seeing a different culture like that, it's almost like a different, I mean, it's like a different world, but everybody, students need to know the fact that the world is so much bigger than what they know it as. And that could be scary. But it's also the fact that we as industrial designers here in the US, I mean, we have our culture and we're really good at understanding our culture. So yeah, there's a lot of jobs out there and there's a lot of designers, but it's about finding that passion for yourself, things that you're really passionate about, because then you can be really good at it.
Excellent. What do you think students maybe shouldn't worry about as much as you see them worrying about?
Oh, they're so worried about the technical tools. They want to make sure they'll spend hours trying to get the lighting on a key shot rendering. And don't get me wrong, it's nice to see, but um, I don't think you need to spend that much time and get into like, oh, I got to know all these different softwares. They're just tools, just like we learned markers
Right.
and
Right.
we got good at markers. Um, but I'll even come back and say, ever since I graduated, I've probably done maybe three marker renderings.
Yeah.
Um,
I think a lot of that also comes in when you get into your particular, whether it's an industry or even certain companies have their um, kind of methodologies of how they go through their process, where you may be still starting with sketches, whether it's, you know, ink pen or, ballpoint pen, and you still shade with it and then go into your digital. Some people now just go straight digital, and we're finding a bit of a push where people are bringing back some of those uh, hand tools just to kind of get the rough feel of it first. So,
mhm. Yeah, we've always pushed it here at CCS as the hand drawing, even if it's just thumbnails, sketches. We know that is the quickest way to get ideas out, and you're not worried about, I'll even push, just draw me an orthographic view, a front view, and do 15 different
yeah,
iterations of scale and proportion because you're not thinking about perspective. Even to draw in perspective, you're like, oh, that line isn't right, or oh, that didn't hit my vanishing point, and then you're slowing your mental brain down, or you're clogging that pipeline of creativity with perspective and technical aspects of it. So just get it out there on paper. It's the quickest way, and especially when you get into CAD, yeah, you spend that so much time just to get a model done that you're like, I don't really want to change it because I don't want to spend another 2 days on it.
you know what it will take to make those edits, and you're like, is it worth it? It's a calculation.
Yeah. And in school, I get that. You've only got so much time to get things done. But even in industry, you only have so much time to get things done. But, if you did that in CAD, you got to get it done.
Right,
you know.
right. And
Mhm.
sometimes, as a designer, I know I'm guilty of this. I've gone down that route of like, it's where it needs to be. and then it starts nagging on you, and you get up in the middle of the night and you spend 4 hours on changing that thing that you probably should have, held back on to begin with.
Yeah, and that's why like design isn't a career. It's a way of life. You know, you commit to this idea that I like and I want to make good things, and they become your art, and you want to make sure that it's perfect, and you want to make sure it's the best thing you can do. And even though you're getting paid, and you know, many times I remember working on some contract jobs going, I am way over my budget and
Uh-huh.
I'm not getting paid, but no, I can't let this go unless I spend this extra couple hours to do it, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you know that the difference is, the 2 hours you spend will make this not only more viable, but will really kind of put in the vision that you saw, but also it's the potential of it may not move forward in its current state, because it's just not right. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Greg, what's inspiring you right now outside of design?
Well, you know, it's hard to keep up with, but again, technology and AI, I mean, you know, I've just kind of finished and completed the first round of, you know, the curriculum for this robotics and human-centered design program. So I'm deep into knowing and looking into those kinds of things and what's happening with technology and AI. I'm always, you know, I'm really intrigued with what it can do. Um, it's not always the best thing in the world. It's really not. It hasn't. I just still find it fascinating just to play with it and see where I go and
Right.
where I can get to it. But so yeah, I guess just kind of technology is kind of what's really kind of inspiring me now.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're almost being inundated with technology to the point where you can't not, you know, look into it or get inspired by it, or you're putting your head in the sand.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's in, you know, it's all in my news feed that happens in my email is loaded with, you know, 5 or 6 really cool articles. It seems like every day, and um, I mean, some of my students are much better at staying on top of that, and they're like, "Oh, well, have you tried this new tool?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm,
It's going so
I,
fast too. It's
mhm,
like it changes from semester to semester. You'll have somebody that will go, "Oh, have you tried this?" And, "Yeah, I tried that. It was alright." And they're like, "No, but have you seen this?" And they've totally shifted it. Even something as simple as like Viscom, they keep changing and adding to its not only its interface, but its workflow to the point where I'm like, "Oh, man, I'm not keeping up," you know?
mhm, yeah, yeah," and that's happening so fast. But there's so many competitors out there
Right.
to Viscom. So I mean, I don't blame them. They got to keep their product up to date and moving it forward. And some of us old guys with gray in our beards, you know, it just, we'd rather just sit down and read the newspaper or go for a walk or something like that than sit there and play with some tech tools. But
I'm kind of glad as an educator myself that there's a bit of this of staying on top just so there's a level of relevancy into how I kinda bring my courses together. There's a part of it that it's fun for me because it's another tool, it's like going
mhm,
into the shop and there's like, "Oh, where did that mill come from?" kind of a thing. Uh, but there's a part of it that I know that it's like, okay, I'm at a level of my career where I like, "No, I'm gonna have to hire people that really are very good at this because I'm never gonna get there. I just need to understand it enough to guide them,
mhm,
as to what I want." So,
yeah, definitely, definitely.
uh, what does you have had both a successful design career as a practitioner, as an educator, you've not only been successful as an instructor, but now you are leading a program. What does success look like for you now, and how has it changed?
Well, maybe it hasn't changed because again, I come back and say, I'm a designer and I design designers. So it's like, getting your product out there and seeing it out there on the store shelf, or seeing, I worked on with Kenmore brand and did the one of the helped launch one of the first curved door refrigerators. God, that was back in 21, 22.
Right.
Um, and I walked into a friend's house and there it is. That's my refrigerator. Um, and so seeing how it affects people and how design and the products that you do, how it affects people. But same thing with me, I think success to me is, seeing, number one, it's every day when you know this as an educator, when that light goes off, you find just the right way to tell somebody something that they don't get. They go, oh yeah, that's amazing to me. And or they find that career path, or oh my gosh, I really enjoy doing this stuff, and it's like,
Right.
yeah, and they're passionate about it. And then, the final thing is the fact that, you know, they get bought, like a product, they get bought by a company and then they're going and having a great time. And I love hearing back from them about, no, I'm still here because I'm loving it, and I've got a house and a family. And that to me that's the value. That's what drives me.
That's great. It's always interesting, especially now that we have all these social platforms where you can keep tabs on people and people reach back out and you get I've even here in the on the podcast had former students that like, oh, you did good, and it makes you feel like,
Yeah.
okay, I
Mhm.
know this wasn't all mine, it's a team effort, but I feel like there's some pride there and in the success of those that we help shape.
Mhm. Yeah. And even the students that, that are, average, we want to call them average.
Right.
Um, they're not the superstars. I really like, hearing where they're at. And, because there's jobs out there, not everyone's going to be able to design the next Xbox, or, the next, drone, or, but there's beautiful jobs doing, packaging and, storage containers, and they're doing really cool stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
cool.
They're making a career and a successful life out of what they're passionate about and what they went
Hmm.
to school for.
Yeah.
Kind of dovetailing into that, one of the things that really doesn't get talked about as much anymore is things like apprenticeships. We have
Mm.
internships, and I'm going to use air quotes on them. I'm going to use the air quotes. Is that, and I think a lot of times internships are used interchangeably with, oh, this is your trial job, but the idea of co-ops or apprenticeships seems to have kind of shifted away in the last few years. Is there something you're seeing in the industry that is needed, or what are your views on the idea of building apprenticeships within the industry?
Um, I think internships or co-ops are almost critical as a designer, because y- you have to learn like that. There's like a maturity and like again the confidence of being in a studio to be able to be productive and add value to that studio. And I mean, there's so many skills that we can teach them. We can talk to them about soft skills and presenting and knowing, how to do. But there's also like conflict management. If there's so many things that happen within a real world setting, that's what's really critical. So having those is really important. And I think what's changed is industry wants internships. Like they want interns. Um, but I always get the request of, well, give me your top three. And I'm like, well, they're all good.
Right.
And they all deserve this opportunity to work in a company. and to build that experience. Because ultimately, an internship, that's why I like the word apprentice, because it kind of goes back in time with the fact that you're working along somebody and you're learning with them, what they need to do. But an internship seems now to be, oh, I need to hire an entry level designer and I want to pay them the lowest I can possibly pay them. And
Right.
that's why they're looking for the best student that you have, because they're already the entry level designer. And it's frustrating, and I get it. I mean, money is, everybody doesn't want to spend any more money than they have to. Um, but there was a great saying. Anson Chung he has a website, and I know I see him on LinkedIn and Instagram he does the website, Just ID Jobs.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of his sayings, and I'm going to murder it. So sorry, Anson, if you hear it, but I love it. I wrote it down and I have it someplace, but it's about when you're looking for a new designer or even an intern, don't hire them from what you see now, but for their potential in 3 to 5 years. And that's what I want to tell all of my industry partners. They all have great potential. And you may make power tools. Well, you're not going to find every student with power tools and a hand drill that's in their portfolio. You don't. You're just going to look for, do they have the skill sets, and do they have a passion? And I know I can grow them in 3 to 5 years, and that's what you're looking for. Because there's still going to be value in the first year. They're going to be feeding you crazy ideas that, your designers that have been doing it for 20 years are like, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Because
They don't know no better.
exactly, exactly. So utilize them for those new skills, and they're going to grow, because that's what, I mean, college and higher education is about, is really, it's about learning to learn.
Yeah. One of the things that I've always found interesting, and you touched right on it, was some of those, that big block of middle students that are not the, you know, top 2%. They are the core of students. One of those goes to an internship and comes back that next year. They're a top student.
Mhm.
They're always like, "Oh, damn, what happened to you?"
Mhm.
And you find out, "Oh, I worked alongside of so and so and whatever." And they really understand, they don't get caught up by the stuff that they were getting caught up by in their own head as a middle student, if you will.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, you nailed it.
uh, I mean, that's how you
You
make
nailed it.
great designers, is you
Mhm.
build them, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
What what do you think makes a great first opportunity for a young designer?
I think, as a young great opportunity for a young designer is knowing that you're going to grow into it. I know that doesn't really answer your question. Um, is that, that first job doesn't have to be your dream job.
Yeah.
That it's a job. I mean, don't take something that's, fetching coffee, because you've definitely earned something way more than that. Um, but knowing the fact that you can go work for a company and learn some skills, I mean, that's the thing you're looking for when you go for an entry level job, is like, you know, are these people somewhere where I can learn from? And do I like my boss, and do I think I can pick up some things from him, and are they willing to teach me and are willing to allow me to grow? Um, and that's great. I mean, go and work for them for, even if it's not your passion, go do it for 3 years, or, and then, gracefully tell them that this is your passion, and I want to go work for, such and such a company because I want to do these things. And then leave and go find another job, and follow your passion. Um, so yeah. Yeah.
No, I think that says it very cleanly. Um, where do you see design is most needed over the next decade?
I don't know, this sounds redundant, but I don't think it's happening as much as we want it to be. But um, it really needs to turn into the human-centered, mindset of things. There are so many needs in, even if we just want to talk about, the aging population of our parents and
Right.
the things that they need, and how things are changing. Um, things are changing so fast in our culture and around the globe. How people live. I mean, right now the housing market is insane. To try to go buy a house, um, but you know, how do we design around that? So that's what I mean by it's kind of human centered. And again, I'll come back and say we have enough stuff in our world, but how do we make a better stuff? And that has to be really focused in around the human and making sure that we're really thinking in a bigger picture about that. So
Yeah.
that's where I think design is most needed. And it's, to say that it's not like we haven't been thinking about that. I think designers have always been thinking like that. I just would wish the rest of the capitalistic world and our CEOs and everyone else would catch up on that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, One of the things, and you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, was we work together with, people like engineers, and then on the other side we have sales and marketing and um, uh, other stakeholders, if you will. How do you foster collaboration, both in kind of your teaching and in the program there?
I think it's an exposure to, if you want to call it their language, and engineers have a different language. They're used to seeing things differently. Um, it's same thing with marketing and even the CEOs, and you have to learn their language. And I think designers, we are kind of like we're the most adaptable ones in the group.
Right.
And
Right.
so because we have to be able to go to the CEO and take them and sell a pitch. We got to get marketing involved, and they have to understand all the little nuances that we want to be able to that we put into that product to make sure that it's communicated correctly across the world. And then we also have to be able to communicate well with engineers. Um, so yeah, it's just like exposing them to those different languages. And so, I mean, even though we sketch and draw, but it's like you got to know how to do an orthographic, a top, front, right side viewport, and know how those views are projected from one view to another. Because you can do a great perspective sketch and you show it to an engineer, and they're like, "Well, does it do this?"
Right.
And it's like, "No, no, no, that's not what it does." But if you can show them an orthographic, that's their language.
Yeah.
They know that, they can see it, they know how to apply that into what they need to do. So yeah, it's just kind of exposing them to different languages, different tools, and giving them those soft skills too to be able to talk to different people.
Do you think design in that case works a lot like a conduit or a translation between those other entities?
Definitely, definitely, yeah. I've got this. It kind of connects a little bit, but Um, I have this slide in a presentation, and I talk to my introduction to my new freshmen coming in, and I say, design, the world of product development, really, we've got different stakeholders, just like you said. You got the CEOs, you got marketing, you got engineering, and you got the designers. Well, the CEO has a priority. Their job is to make money for their company, because they need to pay their employees and their stockholders and everything else, right? That's their job. Marketing, to sell as many products as they can possibly sell, right? Engineering is to make sure that it works and functions and it could be done cheaply. The designer, I say, what's our job? And I like to tell them, I go, we are the Lorax, and
Oh,
we speak for the
interesting.
people.
Yeah.
Because the Lorax and Dr. Seuss, right? He always comes up and says, I speak for the trees. But we speak for the people in that product development process. And so not only we have to be the voice for our user and our consumer, and even bigger than that, we got to be the voice of society and our culture and our environment. Let's let's throw the environment in there, because nothing against engineers and marketing people. They're all great and they're all very focused in what they do. but a lot of times they're not focused on the bigger picture, and that's what I think designers do well is see the bigger picture.
That's awesome. I love the correlation to the Lorax. That's a I I may need to steal that, Greg.
I would say go, you can use that in your class.
Excellent, excellent. If you could give one piece of advice to a student entering design today, what would it be?
I'm, be open to all the opportunities, and know the fact that you know nothing. Come into school knowing nothing, but willing to just like, I'm going to try this, um, and be willing to try things and okay, be willing to fail. And I know that word fail is a hard word to swallow.
Right.
And because when kids coming from the K through 12 situation, fail means I am not good enough. I am not good enough. But ultimately, failure is the best growth, and that's where you grow from. And so, be willing to step outside of your boundaries and your comfort zone and fail. Try something different and fail. Because I will tell my students sometimes, I'm like going, when I asked you to do this particular assignment, and this is how I wanted you to do it, but you somehow missed it. But what did you get from it? And they're like, oh, did this, and this. And I go, I'm happy with that. You failed what I asked you to do, but you learned this. And I'm like, this is great. This is learning, but now we're going to figure out what you learned and how you're going to apply that to the to the new assignment. So failure is part of is, it's integral to learning, and as industrial designers, because we are generalists, we got to fail at everything.
Yeah, yeah. I it's funny as I think that if anything, I think that's one of the challenges of having children being grown up that they're always a success. They can't
Mhm.
fail. And so because they want to protect the emotional side, but you lose the education of learning from your failures.
Mhm.
So that absolutely wonderful. I love how that kind of tied back to you getting to draw cars and not be having to force yourself to fail at cars at your first job.
Mhm.
So, Greg, thank you so much for the conversation. It's been great catching up and hearing your perspective. I'm Max Beach. Keep asking questions.